tell us a little about yourself and what motivated you to run for office.
Absolutely. So, Tim Shrout, I was thinking about, as I've begun running and thinking about answering these questions, I, except for college and 6 months afterwards, have lived within 5 miles of District 2 my entire life. I grew up on the east side of Grandview, the other edge of Longview Lake, and now I've jumped the lake into Lee Summit. So this is home. I moved to Lee Summit in particular in 1994. And so that was a time when the 2-screen movie theater had closed. There were a few places to eat dinner, and we've changed a lot since then. So through those years, I've done quite a few things with the chamber and some city things, the Arts Council, and that Randy and Tom, I think, worked with on that, and just a lot of different things throughout the years in Lee Summit. Raised my family here. What motivated me to run, I'm on the TIF Council, and so the TIF Council's been interesting, and I didn't know a lot, well, frankly, didn't know anything about TIFs, and had to look up the acronym and everything. But okay, I think I've got it. And I went to the first TIF meeting, and people seemed to be really agitated about something. And I thought, well, maybe I just don't understand something about this. So I'll just be quiet and I'll listen, and there's something I'm missing. And so I was quiet, and I listened, and I learned, and by the several hours in, I realized I'm just a normal guy, and no, I pretty much get what's going on, and there was no reason for the angst and the animosity and the tone which was taken about the issue. So I was a little surprised at that, and I thought, well, that's interesting that this is the way things go. And that particular meeting happened to be about the Methodist Church development. So there was a lot in that conversation that sort of piqued my interest and inspired me to continue, obviously, to continue on the TIF Commission, which I'm still on, but piqued my interest more about city government, which I've always been around. And then when I realized that Craig was leaving his seat, it seemed like an opportunity, and that's kind of what led me to this point.
Okay. How will you balance serving your district with your service to our city?
That's an interesting question. Hold on, my brain's getting around that. I've still got Chief's brain. Hold on. So, obviously, there's a lot of symbiosis between the district and the city, and the way I look at it is representing the district, it's important that each citizen in the district feels like they have a voice and maybe a greater representation of what's actually going on in the city. Now, most of you I know in some way, shape, or form, and we're all active in lots of different things in the city, so we kind of know what's going on and feel like we're aware and have a voice. But I'm not sure the majority of the average citizen feels that. So what your question brings to mind is sort of a merging of the two to be sure that those in the district know what's going on in the city and feel like they have a voice as part of the city, and they feel like their city is listening to them and serves them. And it's hard not to be proud of Lee Summit, but to be sure that those people have a voice and feel proud of what's happening in the city. So I think those two things really merge rather well.
Okay. The city charter clearly defines the relationship between city council and city staff. Please describe how you envision your working relationship with city staff.
City staff, certainly I'm aware of, and I know many people on city staff. I think what comes to mind is that I approach everything in a very measured, pragmatic way. And though there's certainly a division, obviously, city council and city staff are different, the issues that are at stake, there's a very pragmatic way to look at it. And so I feel, there's no reason to favor one over the other, but there is a reason to look at a measure in a pragmatic way and work in a very brotherly way with city staff. Again, it's another symbiosis thing where city council and city staff should work in harmony with what's happening in the city.
Okay. What do you consider major challenges and priorities for Lee Summit, and how will you address?
One of the major challenges, I think, a couple of them come together, but one is that to make sure that the average citizen does feel like they have a voice and maybe know more of what's going on in the city. And the other part of that kind of merges with it is I really appreciate the work that's been done in diversity with Lee Summit. And I know the topic has come up and it's been discussed. And I think there's more that can be done to encourage diversity and make people of every socioeconomic, gender, race feel like Lee Summit is their home and that they've got a good part of it and that we value their part and invite diversity and certainly make that a part of what we seek to do.
Okay. Do you believe economic development should be a primary focus of City Council? Why or why not?
I do. I think economic development is incredibly important and takes me back to the TIF issue, which again piqued my interest in the City Council seat. The TIF issue, again, as I approached it, again, there seemed to be some animosity or some disagreements about it, and that's good. Disagreement is good. It certainly can be handled in a kind and conducive way, but that project in particular felt to me like it was kind of, I'm going to use a very technical term, kind of a no-brainer. It was a property that needed to be moved. There certainly were concerns of neighbors, residential neighbors around there, and I understood that. But it was a property that the church wanted to sell, that the taxes were raised immediately to the benefit of the city, and the economic development that it was to develop that property, and the economic development that it would bring to even many of us here was a tremendous advantage to the city. And so that seemed like a very, very reasonable and exceptional economic development project. And so I think looking at those things, again, in a pragmatic and reasonable way, I know one of the arguments was you don't use TIF money for residential development, and I get it, but that development presented different issues that was very conducive to economic development for Lee Summit.
Okay. Does the current economic development incentive policy provide appropriate tools for sustainable economic growth?
I was looking at that this week, and I think that it does. I think certainly more discussion can be made to be sure that's the case, and that we are favoring economic development and business and entrepreneurship and those types of things in the city. So I think the economic development policy is good, but I think it's worth reviewing. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the basis of that was written in 2015, last updated in 2018, and I feel like it needs to be looked at again if I'm getting my dates right on those.
Okay. So when would economic incentives and enhancements be appropriate?
I'm sorry, ask that again?
When would economic incentives and enhancements be appropriate?
A simple answer would be when it's beneficial to all. And certainly beneficial in the short term is great, but we also have to look at beneficial in the long term. City Council last night discussed some development of the Pine Tree Shopping Center, and there was some consideration that they'd put out there for a 30-year term, which is a long time. So that was something I think they're still debating. But looking at the premise of incentives, what it brings to the city, how it enhances the city, and how it affects us both in short term and long term are all things to consider.
How does Lee Summit continue to be the place to live, work, and play?
Again, I'm very favorably disposed to Lee Summit. It is the place to live, work, and play, and to continue to do that, I'm also on the Affordable Housing Committee and the Ignite initiative. And I think one of the ways we do that is part of the diversity idea that I have, because when we look at some of the studies that are part of affordable housing, we find that the more diverse a city or a society is, the more attractive it is to draw more business and even more arts and more things that make the community more enticing and more desirable for a destination to live and work and play.
Okay. Cooperation, diplomacy, and mutual respect are necessary to ensure the appropriate process established by our charter and existing ordinances. What leadership experience do you have that has helped you prepare for the level of professionalism required of city council members?
Yeah, excellent question. I love that question. It's really one of my cornerstones is to make sure that there's that consistent measure of civility and diplomacy in everything we do and say. In fact, it's so much a part of who I am and everything that I've done that I kind of make everybody mad because I'm very diplomatic with everybody. I'm not going to be unkind on this side or on this side, but very much in the middle. So it's really about listening and having an ear for each person. And the leadership that's allowed me to do that really my entire career has been in sales. And in sales, you must be very diplomatic because you work with every type of person. And so that's been a huge part of it. Also in management in my career as I am a director of sales and marketing where I work at Allied National. It's an extremely valuable trait. In addition to leading groups of people even in social or church types of settings, that's something that I very much have championed to make sure, again, everybody has a voice in a kind, civil, and diplomatic way.
Okay. What is Lee Summit's role in supporting and contributing to the cultural arts?
What's Lee Summit's role? Was that the first part of it?
Yeah.
I think our role has continued to increase, and it's been extremely valuable. So for my time on the Arts Council, that was when I think Summit Theater Group was just beginning to develop, and since that time, there's innumerable opportunities for the arts. The relationship with Longview College, the relationship with the school districts, there's so much awesome opportunity for the arts. I'm a huge proponent of them, and I think Lee Summit has done a good job to be cognizant of that and to promote it. It seems like very consistently and frequently there are arts of some kind, whether that's performing arts or music or arts. And there's always an opportunity to do that, and I think the city should stay on that, continue to be active in it, and promote arts of all kinds throughout the community.
Okay. How does Lee Summit maintain and continue to improve its remarkable amenities such as parks, cultural arts, and wide variety of entertainment options?
I think it's really just keeping it top of mind and paying attention to those things and continuing to do things to promote and to be willing to be engaged in different things like that. And I think, again, we've done a good job of it. I believe there can always be more attention paid to the arts, and I think it's a vital part of a burgeoning and growing community.
Please explain your understanding of workforce development and how we best leverage.
Well, you might have to help me a little bit with that. Workforce development as, can you give me a clue?
You're on your own.
I'm on my own, all right.
Can't help.
So workforce development, the thing that comes to mind brings me back to affordable housing. So workforce development, we want a good workforce to be part of Lee Summit. And for example, Lee Summit Hospital or St. Luke's, whichever, large employers need to be able to draw from our community to hire their workforce. We need to have employable people in Lee Summit that don't have to commute or drive a long way to get to their jobs. And so that's where affordable housing comes in. If those folks have to come in from Kansas City or other places to get to their jobs, we would rather have those people to be a part of Lee Summit. And affordable housing would certainly lend itself to that so that the workforce would be right here in Lee Summit, and there'd be plenty of workforce to staff, again, even our small businesses or those bigger entities that are in town.
What is your vision for the Lee Summit Airport?
My vision for the Lee Summit Airport, just to be frank, I'm not got that on top of my head. I think the Lee Summit Airport has made vast improvements since I moved here 25 years ago and have flown out of there several times. And my apologies, I have no more for you than that.
Okay.
Thank goodness it's not in my district.
All right. What would you most like to accomplish during your term?
I think there's a lot of things that are happening that I would like to see advanced, but again, really focusing on the cultural arts, focusing on diversity, and focusing on affordable housing, and making sure that people do consistently know what's going on in our community and have a voice in our community. That's really service, I think, is the cornerstone of what I want to talk about and lend and enhance should I get the opportunity to serve on the city council. So those are the things that I really hope to accomplish.
What is your long-term vision for Lee Summit?
Long-term vision would be that Lee Summit continue to develop. I mean, we have such a gem in downtown Lee Summit that definitely the downtown corridor needs to be continued to be supported, and that's a huge cornerstone of where we're at. So that kind of development, continuing to attract both large employers and entrepreneurs, as I think we do a really good job of. So long-term vision for Lee Summit is that we continue to be that shining city on a hill as part of the Kansas City metro area that every other community really wants to be, and we continue to be the example for that.
Okay. All right. Tim, you've got about 10 minutes. Is there anything else that we...
Does that mean I spoke too quickly?
No. You're right on, consistent with everyone else. So you've got 10 minutes to tell us whatever you want to tell us.
So I didn't go in depth in my biography. So I do have a wife and 9 children. They're not all mine. 6 of them are step. 3 of them are mine and my previous wife, and she's still in Lee Summit as well. 2 of my kids have been through Lee Summit high schools. One is studying criminal justice in Springfield, and my daughter is studying broadcasting and psychology in Warrensburg. So all right here in Missouri, come through the Lee Summit School District, and I've got a 17-year-old at Lee Summit High School. So we're very much a part of this community. We love the community. We love the churches in the community. Every aspect of what is here is just a great place to be. So serving in this kind of capacity is something I feel like is the right time for me to do, though it's been such an enjoyable experience, even here talking with you all, that I feel like in a sense, gosh, maybe I should have started this a long time ago. And yet sometimes with children and activities and things are very busy, so God has the right timing in mind for things. So that's what brings me to this point.